This is 2023's Knock at the Cabin. Warning, spoilers ahead. We open up to the forest, where Wen is catching the grasshoppers off of the ferns. She collects them in a giant jar, and we see that she's right in front of her cabin. She tells the grasshoppers that she's not going to hurt them, and she only plans to learn about them for a bit. She grabs her notebook and starts naming all of the bugs. She goes on to have full-blown conversations with them, but she's interrupted when she spots Leonard walking up the path. This girl has nerves of steel. If I saw someone like Dave Bautista dressed as an office worker with a shirt that's barely holding on, I'd run for my life. He's either about to beat you up or audit the crap out of you. Leonard tells Wen that he's not from the area, but he just wants to make a new friend. Wen tells him that she doesn't talk to strangers, and he tells her that she's smart for that. Then he tells her that he's there to be her friend, so he doesn't plan on being a stranger for too long. They introduce themselves to each other, and he turns her attention to her grasshoppers. He gets down on the ground to help her catch some more, and he gives her some wisdom on how to deal with caged animals. Knowing M. Night Shyamalan, this is all foreshadowing on how they plan to deal with their victims later. He's very obvious with his details, but you still want to keep watching. Wen points out that she actually has two dads, and Leonard seems surprised by the news. Then he hears rustling in the woods, and he tells Wen that they should play a questioning game. They spend a little time asking questions to get to know each other better, and he tells Wen that his heart is broken due to what he has to do here today. Soon, Sabrina, Redmond, and Adrian show up, and Leonard tells Wen that they're more like people he works with. He wants her to remember that no matter what happens today, she'll always be his friend now. She rushes to the cabin, and Leonard warns her that she has to convince her dads to let them in. Otherwise, they'll have to find their own way in. That would be a terrible thing to witness. Befriend the little girl in the woods before Ron Weasley shows up with a pickaxe and a shovel. Then warn her they're going to break in if they have to. I'd say it's going to be a pretty bad day. Wen rushes inside and locks the door, and she goes to the back porch to get Daddy Eric and Daddy Andrew inside. After getting them inside, she tells them everything she knows from Leonard, and they think that she's talking about Jehovah's Witnesses or something similar. Just then, 7 knocks come from the front door, and Leonard calls inside for them to answer the door. Eric introduces himself through the door, but Leonard tells him that they should just let them in. Leonard tells him that they're there to save a whole bunch of people, but they can't do anything without their help. Andrew looks out the window to find the others lined up with weapons, and he goes to call the cops. They find that the phone isn't working, and Adrian tells Andrew that they cut the phone line. They're being extremely courteous for being armed strangers at a random cabin in the woods. Why is it always a cabin in the woods? Andrew tries to tell them that he has a gun, but he tells Eric that it's actually in the back of the truck. Redmond is losing his patience though, and he thinks that he's bluffing. Leonard apologizes for Redmond's outburst, but he assures them that this is their last chance to open the door. When they don't answer, the 4 members start finding ways to break in, and Eric thinks that they should make a run for the car. Suddenly, Sabrina finds her way in, and she ends up knocking Eric unconscious. Just then, Andrew starts beating on Redmond, but when he finds out that everyone else is inside, he finds that he's run out of options. Then we get a random flashback to Andrew's parents visiting him and Eric in the city, and it's clear that they aren't the most supportive people in the world. I'd imagine that they just came out to them, and it went about as well as Andrew had expected. When Eric comes to, he finds that he and Andrew are strapped to chairs while the other people are fixing the cabin, and Leonard tries to talk about the kids' show that he put on for Wen. Andrew has had enough with the small talk, and he thinks that they're there because they're a gay couple. Leonard and the others assure them that they aren't here with hate or prejudice in their hearts, and they gather to introduce themselves to the couple. Sabrina starts by saying that she's a nurse. Then Leonard, who is a second-grade teacher and bartender. Next, Redmond is a gas inspector. Finally, Adrian explains that she's just a line cook right now. Suddenly, Leonard tells everyone that it's time, and he tells the family that they're here to stop the apocalypse. Fantastic way to introduce yourself. He should have said that through the door. Not that it would have changed anything. Even Eric thinks that he's going through a psychological break, and he has a concussion. Leonard tells Eric and Andrew that they have to choose which one to sacrifice. Otherwise, the rest of the world will die. After that, the 3 of them will be left alive to wander the dead planet alone. Eric still feels like they're being targeted for some reason, but Leonard assures them that they're just the family that was chosen to save the world at this time. Leonard explains they've all had visions of the end if they don't choose who to sacrifice, and he warns of devastation all around the world. Andrew still thinks that he's delusional, but Eric seems to be listening to Leonard's words. Eric still thinks that none of this makes sense, but Leonard tells them that for every time they tell them no, they'll unleash a plague on the world. Sure enough, Eric and Andrew say no, and Redmond releases the first plague. Oh, they also have to die to release a plague. We lost Ron so early! Not the Weasley! In another flashback, we see Eric and Andrew show up at an adoption agency as friends, and they meet Wen for the first time. In the present, Wen holds Andrew closely as Leonard vomits in the kitchen from what they've just done. They remove Redmond's body from the house, and Leonard turns on the news to show them the news. So they're telling the truth. Redmond's death brought on massive tsunamis, and now I have a new irrational fear considering that I don't live anywhere that has tsunamis. Could you imagine a 50-foot wave coming at you? There's nowhere to run with something like that. After realizing that there might be some sort of truth in what Leonard and the others have said, Leonard tells them that they'll give them until tomorrow morning to reflect on their next chance to sacrifice one or the other. Andrew is still saying that they'll never sacrifice the other, but Eric seems to be having a change of heart. In another flashback, we see just how happy Eric, Andrew, and Wen are as they drive out to the cabin, completely unaware of the horror they have to face in the present day. Back in the cabin, Sabrina tries to tend to Eric's wound. She explains that their belief started when she was getting visions. At first, she didn't believe, but she knows that Eric will in time. She explains that everything she's seen in her visions has come true so far, and she always knew that she had to believe in something more than herself. I definitely think that Eric is having a conflict of interest right about now. He's ready to consider everything, while Andrew is so gung-ho about letting the world burn so that he can have his family. Andrew thinks that Leonard has been timing everything to a T, but he doesn't think that the timing lines up just right. The first earthquake happened 4 hours before Redmond died, but the massive seismic activity and tsunami happened right after Redmond's death. Meanwhile, Wen manages to sneak out through the basement, and Leonard goes out into the woods to call out and search for her. Eventually, he finds her and he brings her back to the cabin. Andrew takes this chance to point out that they were definitely targeted for being gay, and he mentions that he recognized Redmond from a bar. Apparently, years before, Andrew was attacked by a man in a bar for being gay, and Adrian is really starting to question whether they were scammed or really had the visions. Andrew might just be able to sway Adrian, and that would be enough to screw up the whole plan. But would the world die, or just the 4 members? Leonard stays true to his purpose, and he gives them the night to think about things. In the morning, Adrian makes everyone breakfast, and she tries to connect with Wen. Wen seems pretty unfazed by everything going on, though. When it comes time to make a decision again, Andrew tries to point out to Leonard that they were having a shared hallucination. Meanwhile, Wen sneaks Eric a knife, and he starts cutting his bonds. Next, Leonard gets ready to pose his question again, and Adrian opens up about how she's the next one to go. She tries to play to their softer parent side, but Andrew shuts her down. After Eric and Andrew give their answer, Adrian prepares for the end, and Leonard removes her body from the room. Well, now there's a new virus called X9, and that sounds absolutely terrifying. Needless to say, I'd almost be a believer if the TV didn't say that it was pre-recorded, and Andrew is calling them out on it. Andrew might be a little bossy, but he's definitely got a point. Just then, Wen throws a fit as a distraction, and Eric cuts through his rope. On top of that, Andrew manages to work his hands free, and he sneaks outside to get the gun from the back of his truck. Sabrina rushes outside to stop him, but he manages to get in the car before she can stop him. She stabs him in the side to get him back inside, but Andrew manages to load the gun before she can stop him. Sabrina runs away, and Andrew sees that they have already popped the tires, so there's no escaping. Andrew hobbles inside to help Eric, and he tells Leonard that they're done listening to his mumbo-jumbo. Leonard tells him that it's time for the next sacrifice, and Sabrina comes rushing in through the back door. Well, that worked right into Leonard's hands. Or maybe it was already set in motion by the universe. I think I'd actually be more disappointed if it turned out that Leonard and the others were just crazy. In another flashback, we see Eric and Andrew having a romantic conversation in the bar, and a man tells them to keep their voice down. The man attacks him with 2 different bottles before walking out, and Andrew ends up getting really hurt. After that, Andrew starts training and working out to protect himself, and he goes to buy the gun. Back in the present, Leonard finishes Sabrina off with his weapon, and Andrew goes to Redmond's body to get his wallet. When he comes back inside, he tells Leonard the real name on the license, and it turns out not to be Redmond. Andrew is sure that they were targeted now, but Leonard still stands by his belief. Andrew locks him in the bathroom, and they get ready to go look for Leonard's car. They really thought a bathroom would hold someone like Leonard? He immediately breaks the window to the bathroom, and now they're wondering if he's waiting for them outside. Did you see the size of that window hole, though? I don't even think that I could fit through that. Andrew shoots through the shower curtain, and Leonard tackles him. After a little bit of wrestling, Leonard manages to take the weapon, but it turns out that Andrew really did hit him in the arm. Out in the living room, Leonard tells them to turn on the TV, and Eric follows directions. This time, it looks as though multiple airplanes are just falling out of the sky. I'd say this is a level of disaster that is too coincidental to be anything but what Leonard claims. I feel like this movie would stop people from getting on a plane just in case someone in a cabin can't make a choice. It seems as though Leonard might have finally gotten through to Eric, and Eric asks Andrew if he really thinks that everything that's happened is just a coincidence. Leonard can tell he doesn't believe himself though, and Eric seems to be sold. Leonard takes a moment to have everyone out to the back, and he warns them that they'll only have a few minutes to fix things after he's gone. Eric sends Wen inside, and Leonard tells them more about the visions. Leonard has been haunted by the visions of screaming for quite some time now, but he goes on to talk about the kids he taught. Then he calls Eric and Andrew his new friends, and he asks them to make a choice. When they say no this time, Leonard ends things, and the sky immediately turns black as a storm crawls in. Again, I'm sold. I'm really wondering why Eric is still waiting around to see what's going to happen next. The end! The end happens next! Eric disappears inside, and Andrew hobbles to follow him. Eric points out that they still have a few minutes, and he tells them about a figure he thought he saw earlier when the strangers arrived. He tells them that he can feel the figure now, and Andrew tells him that he believes him. He still wants the three of them to leave together for the rest of their time on Earth, but Eric doesn't think that's a way to go about things. Eric sees that Redmond represents malice, Adrian is nurturing, Sabrina is healing, and Leonard is guidance. Eric is sure that this wasn't a home invasion situation, and that they were chosen by the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Andrew can't believe that they're supposed to sacrifice their love for the world, and he doesn't think that he should give up his love for the hateful people of the world. Eric is choosing to be the one to die? No! It makes sense though, since Eric has come to terms with everything, but I don't have to like it. Eric tells Andrew about how he sees Wen in the future, and he wants Andrew to be the one to witness it. Just then, there's a gunshot, and Andrew is the only one standing. He mourns the loss of Eric, and eventually, he goes to Wen in her treehouse. When she sees that it's just him, she asks if Daddy Eric saved everyone, and Andrew holds her close as the rain pours. Meanwhile, lightning strikes the cabin and burns it to the ground as the two of them walk down the road hand in hand. Eventually, they come to Leonard's car, and Wen asks if they stopped things in time. Andrew pulls over to a diner to check, and they find people watching news coverage of how all of the devastating events just suddenly stopped. Andrew finally realizes that Leonard and the others were right, and they go back to the car to look through Leonard's things. In fact, all of the things that Leonard and the others said were true, aside from Redmond's name. What about Wen and Andrew, though? The only people in the world that will ever know the sacrifice that was made is them, and they're meant to live their life like nothing happened now. Well, it looks as though they're ready to face the world together, and they hop right back in the car. This is actually a really happy ending for an M. Night Shyamalan movie. Then the credits roll. It definitely had me questioning things at times, but I'm glad that they didn't go with a cop-out ending. Great acting, too. Give it a shot. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.